have you seen this book before? It was first published in 1991 by the Walter Foster Company. Within the pages of this book is described the drawing method most commonly used by Disney animators, which is to draw a simplified version of the character first, and then to add the details of the character on top, erasing the simple shapes as you go, or when your drawing is finished. In this real-time demonstration, I'll draw one of the characters from the book, Pluto. I'll make a simplified version of him first, and then I'll add the details on top of my simple shapes and erase the simple shapes as I go. If you'd like to follow along with me, you can download a border template which is linked in the description below. In addition, you can also download the reference I'm using, which is taken from the book Learn to Draw Goofy and Pluto. The reference can be downloaded and printed, and like the border template, is linked in the description below. So grab your pencil, your eraser, and let's draw Pluto, one of the most famous Disney dogs. Alright, so I have my border, as you can see. I've got my reference point right there in the middle, and I'm ready to start. Now, some of the things I'm going to talk about today: drawing lightly, drawing with simple shapes, and also I'm going to mention negative space, which is the space or shape surrounding an object. Very important thing. Okay, now I also want to introduce you to a new vocabulary word, which I'm not going to have you write it down, but you're going to demonstrate it for me. And this vocabulary word is called line of action. A line of action is a line that we draw, usually at the beginning, that gives you the right posture or position or angle to your character. Okay, so let's draw that first. Now, when I draw my line of action, I'm usually going to check three places. How close is it to my reference point? Does it touch any of my borders? And how close is the line to my border? Okay, so let's make this first mark. My line of action is going to go right underneath my reference point, about right here. So whenever something is near your reference point, it should be pretty easy to locate. So I'm going to put a little sketch mark, as you can see there. Kind of just a little bit slanted, as you can see. Alright, then I also happen to know that my line of action is going to touch my border over here on the right. Actually, it's going to touch it straight across from my reference point. So what I do is this: I take my pencil, and without using my ruler, just really light like this, I'm going to draw straight across a straight horizontal line. I'm going to draw that all the way across until I hit my border, okay, like that. And then where it hits my border right here, I'm going to put another mark that kind of slants down like that just a bit. Okay, so now I know where my line of action is compared to my reference point, and where it touches my border here on the right. Now in this case, my line of action touches my border at my top border. Okay, now I want to make a judgment here. Where does it touch? Now I'm going to look at this, and I want you to judge the distance that I'm showing you. And I think let's do that about right. Let's see, about right there. I'll put a little mark, as you can see. Okay, so now I have three pieces of information. It's going to start here, it's going to hit here, it's going to end here. Okay, and it's going to be a curving line. So I'll just kind of show you this motion I'm going to use. It's going to be kind of like this, and let's go ahead and sketch like this here. Now, whenever I use the word sketch, I want you to draw nice and light. So I'm going to go from here like this, and I'm just going to draw towards that mark that I left right there, right under my reference point. Now I'll go over that just a little darker so you can see it, and catch up with me like that. Okay, there's half of my line of action. Okay, it's going to go like this. So it's going to show you this motion is going to go down, and then it's going to connect right over here like that to this mark that I made here, just with a gentle curve. So I'm going to sketch that like this, with this gentle curve, and I'm going to go right to that mark that I made. Okay. Now this is, as I mentioned, a line of action. and it's going to give us the posture or the angle of Pluto's body. All right, now I always like to take my time and make sure I've got my line of action really good at the beginning. Okay, now the next thing I want to draw is Pluto's body. Okay, now here's a chance for me to review with you the definition of negative space, space surrounding an object. So I'm going to come up here on my line of action, I'm going to come down a short distance for a small negative space, and I'm going to put a mark about right here. I want the top of his body to be that far from my border. See how I'm paying attention to negative space. Okay, back to my reference point. I'm going to go straight up from it about, let's see, maybe this far away, and I'm going to put another little horizontal mark. That's how far away I want the top of his body to be from my reference point. Okay, let's do another one. This one's a little harder. I want to do the front of his body, and what I'm judging right now is how far away it is from my reference point. See how my reference point is kind of useful to me today, and I think it's going to be about this far away. You can draw kind of a vertical line right there. Now when I draw, I like to know how big things are going to be. Okay, so this is giving me information about his body. It's going to be here, it's going to be here, and it's going to be here. Okay, let's kind of connect that. And I'll connect it with a motion that's going to go kind of like that. I'll sketch this super line at the beginning. This will be like the top half of his body. Okay, so here I go like this. I'm going to come down with a nice little curve. And I'm going to run that right into that line, as you can see there. Now let me go over that a little darker so you can see it and catch up, of course. Okay, good. Then I'm going to continue, and I'll show you with my pencil. It's going to be kind of like this. It's going to be kind of rounded. So I'm going to come over, sketching, and I'm going to run this line right into that vertical one that I made a minute ago. Okay. And that gives me the top half of his body. Let's review that. Nice curving line coming down and hitting right there. Okay, excellent. Now a lot of students make Pluto too skinny. Now here's what I'm going to do to avoid that. I'm going to make a judgment from my reference point down, straight down, make this mark about right here. And that's where I want his body to hit compared to my reference point. Put a mark right there. Okay, now that's probably enough information for me to do it. Okay, so I'm going to start right here at the front of his body, and I'm going to curve it over and hit that mark right there, as you can see. Okay, I'm going to come back up here to the top of his body, and I'm going to start it like this. Also kind of thin, as you can see. Then I'm going to connect from here to here with a nice curve. Now notice how much curve I'm putting into the body. I'm going to draw it super light at first. It's going to be like this. Remember, I'm sketching. You can probably just barely see that. And I'm going to go over that again so you can see that just a little bit better. Like that. And if ever I use the word sketch on you, that means I want you to draw it really, really light. Okay, now that gives me Pluto's body. It's a nice, simplified shape, as you can see. Okay, let's put on a head. Now, his head is going to start with an oval, but remember, what I want to know first is how big it is. Or I should say, how much negative space is there between his body and his head? Let's measure that with our eyes. Now I'm going to draw a vertical mark about right here. Okay, this is a mark for negative space. How much space is there between the body and the head? Okay, now let's make another mark. Here's my border, and I'm going to come in. And the question I'm asking myself right now is, how far away is his head from my border? In other words, how much negative space is there from his head to the border? And I think it's a spot that's about here. Okay, so I'm going to draw a vertical sketch mark. So instead of drawing an oval and then wondering why it's not right, I judge the space surrounding it first. Okay, now I make this judgment. Here's my line of action, right here. How far away is the bottom of his head from that? And I think it's about this far away. And I put a horizontal sketch mark right there. Okay, then how about the top of his head? Now remember this horizontal mark I made? Well, I think the top of his head should be just a little bit above that, maybe about here. Okay, now by taking my time, I've developed a type of square or rectangle right here that tells me the exact size of his head. Okay, so I'm going to draw an oval that touches the four sides. Okay, let's go ahead and sketch that in. So here this is. I think drawing circles is a little difficult, but if you know how big they're supposed to be, that makes it a lot easier. Okay, so there's this nice head. I'm trying to make that as round as I can. Go over that. That looks pretty good for the head or the skull of Pluto the dog. Okay, let's put on his neck. Now, for his neck, I use the same technique. This is my line of action. And my line of action is going to run right through the middle of his neck. The bottom of his neck is going to be about here. I'll put a little mark there for the bottom. And it's going to connect down to the bottom of my circle right here. Okay, so that's a pretty easy line to draw. Just a little curve that goes like that. So that gives me the bottom of his neck. Okay. So my next question is, if this is my line of action here, how far away is the top of his neck? It's pretty close. It's about right there. I'll put a little mark there. Then I'm going to do another little curving line, not straight like that, and connect it to his head. Okay, and that gives me the neck of my dog. Alright, I'm feeling pretty good about that. Let's draw in his snout. Now, negative space can help you a lot. That's what I'm thinking right now. How much negative space is there from my right border to the edge of his snout? Let's measure that with your eyes. And let's make a vertical mark like this. Okay, that far away from your border. Alright, but where does it start? Well, it lines up about with the edge of his head, so I'm going to use this mark right here. Okay, so his snout is going to go from here to here, and it's going to be an oval that slants up a little bit. It's a little tricky, so let's do it nice and slow. This side of the oval is going to be a little more pointed, this one's a little more rounded, and let's just do it one part at a time. Okay, so I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to draw into his head, and I'm going to connect with my line of action right here. Okay, see how I'm connecting that there? Okay. It's going to stay connected with my line of action like this until I get out maybe about right here, and then it's going to start to bend and hit my mark. Okay, and I'll stop there for a moment. I'm going to go over that a little darker so you can see it. This is the top of my oval. Starts here kind of below the neck, through the head, connecting to my line of action, then curving down and hitting my negative space mark. Okay, let's do the bottom. Now the bottom's going to go kind of like this. I'll just kind of show you that motion right here. Now once I do that motion, I lower my pencil just a little bit and let it touch the paper, and it gives me a super light line. Okay, you can barely see that. Let's go over it now. Remember, I'm going over mine to make it darker so you can see it, but I want you to keep yours really, really light. Okay, and that gives me the snout of my dog. What I want you to ask yourself right now is this: is your snout the correct negative space distance from the border? Ask yourself that. Okay, let's move on to a foot. Now, there's a way to do this foot, and I'm going to show you how, of course. Now what I'm going to do is look at his head. And I'm going to compare this head with this foot that I'm going to put down here. And what I'm noticing is that the toe of my foot is going to line up inside his head about right here. So I want you to draw a vertical line inside his head right here like this, and I want you to continue it down nice and straight until you hit your bottom border right here. Okay, this technique that I'm using is I'm comparing something new that I'm drawing, a foot, with something I already drew, his head. Okay, good. Now, I also happen to know that his foot lines up, his heel I should say, lines up inside his body about right here. So I want you right here in his body to put another vertical mark, right there. And then take this mark down, nice and light. Take it down to right near your bottom border, like that. These two lines tell me how wide my foot is. Okay, now how close is my foot to my border? How much negative space is under my foot? I think my foot is really close to my border, so I'm going to put a mark about right here. This will be the bottom of my foot. Okay, one more mark. How much negative space is there from the top of my foot to the snout? And I think that they're pretty close, so I'm going to put a mark about right here and draw that horizontally across like that. Now see what you've done. You've developed this rectangle that tells you how big his foot is. Most students just draw a foot, but I'm showing you how to know how big it is without guessing. Okay, let's do an oval that touches these four sides. So I'm going to sketch like this. And I'm going to come down. And that gives me a nice foot. Now if your oval's not really, kind of round, just go over that again. Okay, as a review, the toe lines up in the head right there, and the heel lines up in the body right there. Okay, let's attach a leg. Okay, now I'm going to put some marks on this. I'm going to put a mark here near the top of his foot, right there. That's for the top of his leg. And I'm going to put another one right here for the bottom. Okay, that makes sense that the leg would attach to the foot. Okay. Then I'm going to do this. Back to my reference point. I'm going to come down right below my line of action and move a hair to the left. And I'm going to put a dot right there. I'll make that dot a little bigger so you can see it. See where I put that dot? Compared to my reference point, it's below and a little to the left. Then I'm going to draw a slanting line down like this till I hit the bottom of his body. Now, his elbow has a little bit of a bump on it, so right here near the end I'm going to make this little rounded like that because he's got kind of an elbow joint right there. Okay, so this gives me his elbow. And what I want to do now, and make sure that elbow is kind of rounded like that, is I want to connect this elbow to this here, and I want that to be with a line that's not quite straight, but not too curvy either. So I'm going to kind of connect it like this, doing it nice and light, making a little bit of curve into it, right there like that. Okay, and that gives me the bottom of his leg, as you can see. Now, the next thing I need to do is I need to do the top of his leg. Now, let me show you where I'm going to put that. I'm going to come from my reference point right here. I'm going to come straight down from it again. Move a hair to the left. Put a dot about right there. Okay, notice that dot right there. Now it's connected. I'm going to go from here to here, and I want this line to be just a little bit curvy. I'll do it super light at first. I'll make it a little darker so you can see it. Notice how I've been using my reference point to help me. In fact, I'm going to do that again here in a moment. Okay, now this is really starting to look pretty good. Let's do another arm. Okay, now back to my reference point. What I'm going to draw is from my reference point, I'm going to draw a slanted line that goes up like this until I hit the top of my body right there. Make that a little darker so you can see. And then where it hits, I'm going to put just a little mark slanting the other direction. Okay. Then for my reference point again, I'm going to go like this with a slanted line until I hit the top of his body, like that. And then I'll put another slanted line going in the opposite direction. Okay, let's draw that arm. So I'm going to sketch this up like this. It's going to be like a triangle above his back. I'm going to put a little bit of a bump on this elbow, because this is his elbow right here. It's a little bit of a bump like that. Then I'll just bring that down, and I want this line to curve just a little, right there. Just like that. Now, I rarely like to erase when I'm drawing, but these two slanted lines right here are distracting to me. It makes it look weird. So I'm going to take those off even right now. I usually don't like to erase, but I'm going to do that because they're so distracting. And what happens, as you can see there, is that makes it look like this arm is above his back on the other side, which is exactly what I want to do. Okay, we're coming down the home stretch. I want to do a leg. Now, negative space. I'm thinking of negative space right now. And I'm asking myself this question. I've got this nice arm here, and I'm going to put a leg on his back right up here. But how far away is the leg from the arm? And I'm going to make a judgment right now of negative space by putting a mark right here. Look how close it is to his arm. Judge that space for me with your eyes, not your ruler. And that is an example of me looking at negative space when I draw. Okay. Then I'm going to go to the top of his body. Here's the top of it. And I'm going to come off it, the little mark right there. Okay, so what I want to do then is draw a leg from here to here. And it's just going to be a little bit of a curve. Now if you're not sure of the shape, you can just take a look. So right here, I'm just going to make a little curve like that. Notice that. And then going back here like this, I'm going to draw and just connect it right there, as you can see, like that. Okay, but the main question that I'm asking myself right now is my negative space between his leg and arm, is that correct? And I'm feeling really good about it. Okay, let's do another foot. I've mentioned negative space several times today. I'm mentioning it again to you. I need his foot to be close to this left border. So let me make another vertical sketch mark, and look how close I'm making that. You draw yours just as close as I'm making mine, like this. This is an example of me looking at negative space. Negative space is one of the secrets of learning to draw well. Okay, what about my bottom border? Well, I'm going to come up maybe about this far, and I'm going to put a horizontal mark. Judge the distance right here. I'm going to put a mark about like that. Okay, now most students end up shrinking this foot, but what I'm judging now is I'm judging the space between his body and the edge of his foot, and I'm going to put a slanted mark like this. Okay. Now, the technique that I'm showing you right now is looking at negative space before you draw a positive shape. Okay, now let's go ahead and do his foot. Now that we know about how big it is, it's going to be right in this area here, and it's going to touch these three marks. Okay, now I'm going to draw it like this. The little curve right there. Then I'm going to touch my mark. It's going to come up a bit, and I'll stop right there. Okay, that gives me half of this foot, like that. Okay, and it's going to come down, touching my mark right here, then it's going to bend, and it's going to touch my other mark right there. See how I'm doing that? And then it's going to come up, and it's going to be a little more pointed right here at the top. See me showing you this motion first, making it super light, and then I'm going to make that just a little bit darker so you can see that shape. Now it's not an oval, it's a little more like an egg where one side's a little more pointed, as you can see right there. Okay, now even near the end of my drawing, and I'm almost at the end here, I still want to be very patient with what I'm doing. Okay, I need a leg. It's going to connect right here, put a little mark right there. It's going to connect right there, and it's going to connect right here. Okay, but the line is going to have a little bit of a bend. It's going to go up a bit, then it's going to bend, and then it's going to travel like that right there. See how light I made that? Let's go over that a little darker. Okay, now I don't want this leg to be too skinny. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a mark in his foot about here, and I'm going to come up here right under my line of action, and I'm going to put a mark about right there. Okay, now I need to draw in between those marks. It's going to have the same type of angle as this, where it goes one way, then it changes direction. So I'm going to come up like this, make a little knee, make it just a little bit rounded. I'm going to come up and draw right towards that mark, like that. I'm going to go over that just a little darker, as you can see. Okay, feeling really good about it. Okay, there's just one more thing that I have to draw. I need to draw one more foot. So let me show you how I'm going to do that. Remember this elbow that we had right here? Nice rounded elbow like this. Right here where the elbow starts to bend, I'm going to go straight across with a line until I hit his stomach right there. Then once I hit his stomach, I'm just going to come out and make a little loop like this. See how light I drew it just like that? I'm going to make that a little bit darker, as you can see right there. I want that to be just a little more rounded, maybe about like that. Okay, excellent. So there we have again the Walt Disney method of starting a drawing, making it simple first. Notice how I tried to draw light. Notice how I use simple shapes, and notice how many times I thought of negative space as I completed this drawing here. Okay, so I want to start today with my eraser, and what I want to do is clean this up just a little bit in some areas, especially this area here in the head where I'm going to be working. So if you have any leftover like vertical sketch marks like this here, line of action is a temporary line, and at this point you can be erasing it. I'm also erasing various vertical lines that I used to help myself get started, and I'm erasing those right now. Remember, those hopefully were drawn very light and easy to erase. See, I've got this vertical line inside his head right here. Yeah, get rid of that. That's just going to be in my way. Line of action inside his head too. Vertical line right there. A couple of others right there that I'm just touching up. Okay, so as you can see with my eraser, I'm simplifying a little bit this drawing. Okay, now I'm going to continue simplifying with my eraser. I'm going to take off part of this bottom circle. Okay, so I'm going to erase it like this. here. Kind of the bottom half of that circle right there. Okay. And then also, I'm going to take off a section of my oval, this section right here. Like that. So now I kind of have a combination of my circle and oval. Now that shape there is just a rough approximation of where this head is going to be. And you know, it can be a little challenging. So let's work carefully and slowly and let's detail this head. Now today I'm going to use my mechanical pencil, and I like to draw with my mechanical pencil sometimes. And I'm going to start this great detailing right here where my circle meets my oval with this little corner. That's where I'm going to start. And I'm going to start by sketching in a line that curves downward. I'll draw it really light at first with you, of course. I want this to kind of curve downward like this. And you know, each time I do a line, I'm going to draw it super light at first. Then I'm going to kind of go over it with you. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and start with that line right there. Notice about how far it goes down. I don't want it to go down too far. Maybe about right there. Okay, that's a nice way to start. Now, right at the bottom of this line, I'm going to do another detail line. It's basically going to be straight across. I'm sketching it really light. And I said straight across, but what I really meant was fairly straight with just a little bit of a curve into it, kind of like this here. Okay, so basically straight, but just a little bit curvy like that. Okay, so two lines, one that's curving down, one that's kind of going straight across like that. Okay, excellent. Ready to work on the eyes. Now I'm going to start with the eyes right here, kind of above this middle, this curving line that I drew, right in the middle of it, and almost touching it. I'm just going to put a little mark right there. See where I put that? Just right above that line. Okay, now what I'm going to draw is part of his eyes and his eyebrow, and I'm going to draw kind of a V. I'm going to do this side of it first. It's going to go up. It's going to be kind of straight, but there's going to be a little bit of a curve into it at the end, like that. Now I'm going to go over that again with you, just a little bit curvy, but the line is basically straight up and down. Okay. Then I'm going to do a sketch mark. Now even though I'm doing details, I like to do sketch marks. So from the very top of this line, I'm going to go straight across to the left with a straight across horizontal sketch mark. This will be a temporary mark, but it's going to help me, because I want the tops of both of my V's to be on the same line. So this one touches here, my other one's going to touch here. Now my second one's going to slant. I'm going to do this super light so you can see it. It's going to slant like this. It's going to go up. I'm going to put just a little bit of a curve on it at the very top, like that. I'm going to make that a little darker so you can see it a little better. Okay, I'm just going to draw over that. And that kind of gives me a V that's kind of tilting, as you can see. Now as I go, I'm going to do some erasing. And I'm going to take off this horizontal sketch mark. I just wanted it there for a minute, and I'm going to get rid of it. I lost a little bit of the top of my head when I did that. That's okay, I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay, so I've got this V, and now I'm ready to draw his eyes. Now what I'm going to do is near the top of my V, but not at the very top, maybe about right there. I'm going to put a little mark there. About right there. That's where I want to draw the top of my first eye. And it's going to touch about right here, kind of right on my simple shape line for his head. Okay, now I'm basically just going to connect those, but I don't want it to be straight. I want it to have a little bit of a curve to it. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, now as I work, I'm going to clean up a little. So right now I'm cleaning up a little bit of the side of his head, simple shape, like that. Okay, and that's eye number one. Now in this case, the tops of the two eyes are straight across from each other. So to help myself, I do this. Top of my first eye, I'm going to draw again a horizontal sketch mark straight across to the left until I hit the other side of my V, right there, and then I'll put a little mark right there for the top of eye number 2. Then immediately, since that looks weird, I'm going to take off my sketch mark. I put sketch marks on there to help me, then I like to erase them. Okay, bottom of his eye. Now look at this kind of straight across horizontal line that's got a little bit of curve to it. I'm going to come on this line about right there, and I'll put a little mark there. Now once again, that's a style that I like to draw, is I like to put marks where things touch and then connect. Okay, so I'm going to connect these two with a nice curving line. I'm going to draw that super light like this. You can see how light I put that in? And the reason I do that is I don't know if I got it right, and I don't want to make it dark if it's wrong. Okay, now I like that okay, I'm going to go over that again. So you can see that a little bit better. This nice curving line like that. Okay, details. Let's put in some pupils. Okay, so right over here I'm just going to draw this little curving shape over to the edge of his eye. And then just real quick I'm going to do a little bit of shading on that. Inside that shape right there. Okay, that wasn't too tough. Let's do another one. I'm going to put just a really short line right there. Okay, that's the edge of it. Now, what I like to do is find all the edges, or all the ends. It's going to touch this line about right there, really short line. And it's going to touch right there, like that. Okay, so now I kind of found the edges of it, and I'm just going to draw just really light and connect like this. It's kind of a straight line with a little bit of curve at the end. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do my shading right now too. I'm going to shade that in, as you can see. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. I think it looks a little weird right now, but I think that looks looking kind of fun. Okay, eyebrows. Now, for his eyebrow, what I'm going to draw is right above his eye right here, I'm kind of showing you where, I'm going to put a little loop. Okay, and it's going to touch his eye right there. Put a little mark where it's going to start. And it's going to stop about right there. See those two little marks? Make that just a little dark so you can see. Then I'm going to do this little loop like this. I'm going to draw it super light. It's just a little loop that goes right above his eye. Now I did that so light, I'm looking at that, and then I'll go over it a little bit darker, like this. Okay, and there I have kind of like his eyebrow. Alright, let's do another one. Now watch this technique again. From the top of this eyebrow, I do again that horizontal sketch mark, going straight across to the left. Okay, that tells me where the top of his eyebrow is going to be. Now let's find it. I want it to start about right here. I'll put a little mark there. And I want it to end somewhere over here. I'm kind of looking at that, maybe about right there. I'll put another dot right there. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is just draw like this. Slanted, sketching it super light until I hit my horizontal line there. Then I'm going to come up, touch that line, then bring it down to my dot, just like that. I'm going to go over that again so you can see it real well and then catch up with me just like that. Okay, now those eyebrows kind of give him this not very happy expression on his face. He's not going to be as happy as Flounder. Okay, then with my pencil, I'm going to take off my sketch mark between the eyebrows. Okay, I think that's looking really good. Wipe that off. Okay, now I'm going to work again here between the eyebrows, and I'm going to draw a line between the eyebrows, and all I just need it to be is just curving. And I want it to be just a hair under the top of the eyebrow, so I'm going to go right there, and right there, and just in between them, I'm going to have a little bit of a curve. I don't want it to be too flat. I'm thinking of a spot like that. And then with my eraser, I'll just clean up just a little bit of sketchiness right there. Kind of like to erase as I go. Hope you're kind of doing that too. Okay, I think that's looking really good. Okay, let's move on to his mouth. Now, as I'm looking at the bottom of my eye, I'm kind of deciding that this horizontal line, I made it a hair long. So with my eraser, I'm just going to take off a little of the end of it, just a little, right there. You know, just a little bit. Okay. Now, one of the techniques that I use when drawing is I compare things. So what I want to do right now is compare something old that I drew, this line here under his eye, with something new that I'm about to draw, his mouth. Okay, here I go. So I'm going to take the end of this line right here, and I'm going to draw, slanting down to the left, a sketch mark, only that far away, and then I'm going to put a dot right there at the end of the line. Okay, I'm going to take my eraser, take off that slanted sketch mark. Okay, that dot that I just put on my paper tells me where to start his mouth. Okay, so right here at this dot, I'm going to slant down again about this far, and I'm going to draw this super skinny triangle right in here. Okay, it's really small. This triangle right there. That's kind of like a shadow at the corner of his mouth. Okay, very good. Let's keep going. Now, from my triangle, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw a line that's going to go like this. I'm just kind of showing you this motion. Now let me sketch it in really light. Okay, it's going to go like this. It's going to be about that far from my eye. See how far away it is from my eye right there? Then it's going to start to curve downward a bit, and it's going to run into my simple shape oval, like that. I'll make that a little darker for you now. So here I go, drawing that line. Now I don't want to make it darker down here. I'll just run it into my simple shape oval, and then I'll leave it alone. Okay. Alright. Like I said, this dog's not really happy this time. Alright, very good. Now, let me show you another trick of drawing, when I've already mentioned it today. It's to compare something new with something you already drew. So I'm going to look right here. Remember I drew the corner of his eye a few minutes ago? This corner of his eye? Now from this corner of his eye I'm going to draw straight down a vertical line. Now that makes him look really weird. But this is just temporary. And the reason I did that is because his bottom lip is going to touch his mouth right there. So I'll put just a little mark that slants this way. Okay. Then immediately, since he looks so strange, I take off that vertical sketch mark. But the reason I did it was to figure out something where something touched. Okay, now here I go with his lip. Now, I'm going to come over here, about where the end of my simple shape oval is, and I'm going to draw this. I'll do it sort of quick and light, and then I'll go over it. Okay, I'm going to follow this down like this. I'm going to change direction and draw right towards my mark with a line that kind of goes upwards and hits it right there like that. Okay, now let me go over that again. Make sure you're catching up. There's his back lip. It goes up and hits his mouth right there like that. Okay, I think that's looking really good. Now I'm going to take off with my eraser kind of the bottom of my simple shape oval down here. I'm going to take that off just like that. I'm going to clean up the back of that lip just a little bit. It's got some sketchy lines there. Okay, and now I'm looking at that. I think that's looking really good so far on this dog. Okay, it's time for his nose and his snout. All right. Now this gets a little bit tricky here, but trust me, we'll be able to make this work. Okay, now I'm going to follow his mouth down till I get about right here. And then right here I'm going to curve up, kind of with a hook line, like that. I'll go over that again, help you catch up. Just follow the mouth down, and see how I drew that hook before I got to the end of my simple shape, like that. Okay, very good. Let's keep going here. Touching this hook right about on my simple shape line, about right there. That's what I'm going to draw again. Okay, here I go. I'll sketch this, then I'll review it with you. I'm going to go up, kind of near the top of my simple shape. And I'm going to keep going. I'm going to bend it down for another curving line. And I want this to go down about right there. Okay, now let me review that. Touched right there, near the end of my simple shape. And I'll curve that down like that. Getting my eraser, I'm going to clean up the end of my simple shape. Okay, and I'm feeling pretty good about that. I think that looks okay. I think I'm going to change this angle just a little bit, just a little more this way. So if you know, see, I just noticed a small little error right there, so I'm going to change that just a little bit, and I'll touch it up. And don't ever be afraid to use that eraser if you see a little problem. Okay, let's do another little wrinkle. Alright, this line is a wrinkle. Let's have one that touches it right here, kind of a little bit under my simple shape line. I'm going to draw another one that kind of goes out and over about that far. I'll go over that again. Okay, let's do another one. Let's have a touch about right here. And we'll draw this over about that far, like that. Okay, so let's review that. Wrinkle number 1, wrinkle number 2, and then go back right under your eye, and let's just connect that down right there. Okay, let's make sure we got the top of that. That snout's really tricky. Okay, grab your eraser. Let's erase that simple shape oval. See how that oval is pretty much disappeared off our paper. Just doing a little more touch-ups there. Okay, now I think he looks so funny right now because he doesn't have a nose on him. Every dog needs a nose. Okay, his nose is an oval. Now, let me show you where it's going to be. I'm going to mark the bottom of it with kind of a slanted line about right here. Because, once again, I want to know how big it's going to be before I draw it. Then I'm going to go outside his snout to a spot that's about, I think about right there. I'm going to do another slanted line. Okay. Now, that line, those two lines tell me how big his nose is. And it's an oval that's tilted. So I'm going to sketch it in. I'm not very good at drawing ovals, so I have to draw them over a couple times sometime. I'm going to sketch in this oval like that. Now I drew that really light. I don't think it's that great. I'm going to work on it for a minute and go over it. And try and get it nice and smooth. And, if I can, symmetrical, meaning the same on both sides. Okay, now my drawing at this moment I think looks really strange because it looks like his nose is see-through. Alright, so then I take my eraser and inside his nose I erase that snout line. And just by doing that, that makes my drawing look so much better. Okay, excellent. Now, inside his nose is a highlight, or I should say, a white oval. So, and it's fairly large in his nose. So I'm going to sketch it super light so you can barely see it. Then I'm going to go over it a little darker so you can see it a little bit better. It's just another oval inside his nose, just like that. And then I want to do a little bit of shading. So here I go, I'm just going to quickly fill in this part of his nose like this. So I've got that white highlight, as you can see there. Boy, I think that's looking really good so far. Okay, excellent. All right, now we're coming down the home stretch. We've got just a few more things to do. I'm going to go back now. I still have my simple shaped circle back here. I'm going to leave it on there for just another minute or two, then I'm going to erase it. Okay, let's look at his eyebrow again. Here's his eyebrow. Touching his eyebrow just a little below the top of it, I'm going to put a little mark right there. And I'm just going to draw, basically following my simple shape oval. And I'm going to go out with a curve, and I'm going to go down, about that far. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, I think at this point I'm done with my simple shaped circle. I'm going to get rid of it. Now he looks a little funny because he's no longer connected to his neck. That's okay, we'll fix that here in just 1 second. Okay, dogs, they need ears. And I'm going to draw what I like to call an ear socket. Okay, now let me show you where that's going to be. It's going to be about straight down from his eyebrow, about that far away, straight down from that eyebrow line. I'll put a little dot there. That's where I want to start this socket. And basically the shape of it is just kind of like a tilted U. So I'm going to draw it really light like this at first. And I'll come up for the other side of that. See how light I made that? And the reason I do that is because, I'm not sure if it's good. I don't know if I love it or not. I think it's not bad. I'm going to go over it a little bit more, make it just a hair lower. And I'll bring that up right there. There's that little U shape. Okay. Now before I attach the ear to this socket, I'm going to do this bump on the back of his head. Okay, and I think this bump, I think he looks really funny, like something's missing right here, and it's that bump. Okay, so back to his eyebrow, and right where this curving line touches his eyebrow, right there, put a little mark. Remember, I like to know where something starts and stops, that's what I'm doing now. And then on his ear socket, right here, I put another mark. Okay, so those are my 2 marks that I'm looking at. And what I want to do, I'll show you this motion, is I want to draw right here kind of a loop or a half circle right in there. Okay, now I kind of showed you that motion, now I'll just go over it really light and sketchy. And I'm going to draw in this big bump on his head. See, that's just kind of like a half circle there. Okay, and I'm going to go over that just a little bit darker. Okay, coming down the home stretch. Alright, boy, that's looking really good. Totally turning into Pluto. Okay, let's do his ear. Now let me show you that technique again of how I look at something, see where it touches things I've drawn, and I work on them. Okay, so his ear is going to start inside the socket. Let's put a little mark right here, inside that socket right there. Okay, it's going to be there. And then I've got to tell you that this ear is going to touch his lip. Right there. Let's put a little mark there. Okay, and let's go ahead and start that. So from right here, I'm going to draw this little curving line down to this one. And I'm going to touch that right there. Okay, now see how his ear touches his lip? That's very important. Now his ear is going to come all the way out down here, and it's going to touch his arm, which I have right here. So let me sketch this super light at first. I'm going to come down and touch his arm right there. Okay, now let me go over that again. So his ear starts in the socket, it touches his lip right there. It keeps on curving out and down until it touches his arm right there. Okay, and then his ear is a little thicker at the end and it's skinny where it starts. So I'm going to put a mark on his arm for how thick that ear should be at the end. Let's put a little mark right there. Okay, now what I want to have happen with his ear is I want it to start here and get skinny right here, and as it goes out like this, it's going to get thicker and thicker. Okay, so let's start skinny, then make it wider. Let's sketch it first. Remember, when I use the word sketch, that means to draw it super light in case you got a problem. Makes it easy to erase. So I'm sketching out and just telling myself, okay, you keep making that ear a little bit wider as you come out. There you go. Okay, let's go ahead and make that line a little more finalized. Okay, now look at your ear. If you really like the shape of your ear, it's touching his arm right there, I want you to go ahead and fill that ear in with some shading. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and do that like this. I'm going to fill this ear in with shading. Like this. I'll just come up here and fill that in. Now, you want to make sure that it looks like his ear is in front of his ear socket. And that little shading did that for me. Okay, one more thing before let's turn you loose. Okay, let's work on his neck. You know what, I'm going to take my eraser and erase my simple shaped neck real quick. I sort of know where it is. Okay, now his neck is going to touch right here where the bump touches the socket. Right exactly there. And then I'm just going to do a little curving line out here. Like that. Make sure it's a little curvy, not too straight. Okay, then the bottom of his neck is about even with his lip, like right here. And I want this neck to curve up just a little, like that. Okay. Now notice how a few minutes ago we started with an oval and a circle, and now we've detailed carefully the head of Pluto. I'm just going to erase just a little bit more inside this neck and clean that up. And there we have it. Very fine thing of Pluto. Oh, wait, I forgot a detail. Dog has to have some whiskers. Let's put on some whiskers before we wrap this up. Okay, whiskers are easy. There's a couple dots. Let's put one dot for one whisker right there. Now, I don't want that dot to be too big. It'll look weird. This is a small one. I'm going to slant down and to the left. See how my pencil's just kind of going right there. Whisker number 2. Okay. Then whisker number 3 is going to be right here, right there. Little dot. Okay, 2 more. This one's just a small little line that pokes out of his snout. Don't make it too long, it's just really short. Points up just a little. And then this one right here, really short, points down just a little bit. Okay, so to start the collar, here's what I want to do. I want to put a couple marks on his neck and his arm that are going to help me. For example, right here on the bottom of his neck, you can see the collar touch. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little mark right there to show me that the collar is going to touch the bottom of the neck. Okay, and I'm just going to leave that mark there for a second. Okay, then I'm going to look at his arm. Here's the end of his ear. I'm going to come up his arm a short distance, and I'm going to put a little mark right here, like that. You can kind of see that. And that tells me the collar is going to touch the arm right there. Then I'm going to keep on going up this arm, maybe about right here, and I'll put another mark on the arm. Okay, so right now I have one mark, bottom of the neck. I have 2 marks on the arm. Okay, top of the neck. Now, notice the bump on the back of his head right here. Here's the top of his neck right here. Okay, now this collar is going to touch the top of his neck, and it's going to be about right there. Okay, so I'll just put a little mark right there. One more, then I'll start drawing. Just to the left of this mark, I'm going to put another small mark right here. Okay, now you have to trust me. I've put on 5 marks. There's 2 here, 1 here, and 2 here. Okay, so now it's a matter of connecting them together in the right order. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go from this mark here to this one right here. Okay, now I just have to make sure that I connect those 2. Alright, so here I go. Now I'm going to draw it super light in case I mess it up. So I'm going to come up here like this. This is the outside edge of the collar. And I'm going to curve around. I'll come back here, make sure that's kind of going up like this, and then over kind of like that. Now, whenever I draw something, I like to do it really light in case I mess it up. Okay. Now I'm going to go over that a little darker, just so you can see that kind of clearly. And see which marks got connected together. Okay. Now this demonstration is kind of an optional one, but I'd love to see how you do on something hard. Okay, very good. Now, pay close attention so you don't mess this next part up. Okay, go to the bottom of the neck. Draw this line down until it hits his ear. Just like that. Okay, then stop for a second. Then right next to the line to the left, put another one pretty close to it, right there. Okay, now don't be lost now. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to connect this one to this new one that I just put in. Okay, so I'm going to do it really slow. It's going to come down, be really close to my ear. It's going to come up and over like this. It's going to go this way. And it's going to connect about like that. Now see how light I did that. Okay. Now that looks really bad. I think that looks terrible. It doesn't look 3D because I'm not quite done. There's one more thing I need to do. Okay, I'm going to draw over that so you can kind of see it. A lot of students kind of draw it like that so it looks like a donut. Okay, but it's not quite right. Okay. Alright, let's do one more line, then we'll be done. Okay, remember this mark right here? And now I need to put a new mark right there. Now see where I put that? Like that? Okay, so all I need to do then is to gently connect that like this. This line coming up right there, just like that. Okay? And that makes it look 3-dimensional. Okay? And so if you worked with me step by step, that's just what you need to have happen. I'm going to put a few touch-ups on this collar, but the instructions, we've pretty much given them to you. Now if I wanted to give you an advanced drawing piece of advice, it would be this. These lines actually connect to each other, but the neck's in front. Okay? So what I want to do is, I'm not sure that they're smooth, so what I do is I just kind of connect them for a minute, okay, to make sure that they're kind of a smooth curve. Now it starts to look even worse for a minute. So I just want to make sure that that's kind of an oval like that. Okay, so if that's an oval, then I just take out the line here so the neck's in front. Okay. I want to make sure that this one connects to this one. Like kind of smooth like that. Now that looks really weird. Okay, for a minute. Just touch that up with my eraser. Okay, just want to make sure that looks kind of smooth to me. Okay, put the neck back in. Okay, now over here I think my collar got a little bit skinny, so the line's pretty much okay, but I just want to make it just a little bit thicker out here. It's a little bit thicker right through here, and we'll bring that like that. And I'll touch that up just a little bit. The next detail that I want to work on is this back foot right here. So I've got this simplified shape that shows me about how big my details should be, and so I'm ready to start. I'm going to start here on the back, and I'm going to draw over my simplified shape, and I'll come up here on the side, just like that. And then I'm going to continue downward, and I'm going to draw toe number 1. So this will come down like this, and then notice how I'm going to change my simplified shape, and I'm going to curve up into this shape, curving this direction, as you can see, and I'll go up about that high. Okay, and that gives me toe number 1. Now what I like to do is I like to use one detail to help me draw another. So if I have toe number 1 done and it looks good, I'm going to use it to help me draw toe number 2. So toe number 2 is going to touch toe number 1 about right here, and I'll put a little mark on toe number 1. Okay, then I'm going to draw downward until I hit my simplified shape, as you can see, and then I'll curve this up and into my original simple shape, and I'll go up about that far. Okay, and that gives me toe number 2. So then I want to use toe number 2 to help me draw toe number 3. Okay, so that's going to touch about right here, as you can see, and then this toe is going to be much skinnier, much smaller, and I'll draw this up like this with a nice curve, and then I'll have this touch his leg about there. So that gives me my 3 toes, as you can see. Okay, then I'm going to take my eraser and I'm going to erase this simplified shape. So I'm just left over with my nice detail. Those 3 toes, as you can see, like that. Okay, let's continue. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish off his leg next. So I'll come up here. My simplified shape is really good. So I'm just going to carefully draw over that. I don't need to change it very much at all. And I'll have it come up like this. And then I'm going to stop about right there. And I'm just going to make just a little bit of a curve out like that and into the top of this body. Okay, so once again, I got a nice curve here, and then this pretty much follows my simple shape like that. Okay, good. Now I'm going to go back to this toe, and I'm going to use it to help me finish off his leg. This simple shape line is really good, so I'll just draw over it, and about right there, and I'll come up. I'm just going to draw over this line. I'm coming up into his knee. I don't want his knee to be too sharp. My simple shape was really good. I'm going to curve in just a little bit, still following the simple shape. And as I come up, I'll come into that body shape, draw this up, and I'll stop about right there. And that gives me the nice shape of his leg. Okay, now with my eraser, I'm going to now clean up the rest of my foot. Simple shape, as you can see. I'll get rid of part of his body right there too. And I'm almost done with this leg and foot. Okay, just a couple things. Now, right here where my foot touches his leg, right here, there's just a little wrinkle. So it's just one short line, only about that far. Just a little wrinkle right there. Then when I come up to the top of this leg, I'm looking at that. Then I'm going to come down about that far. I'll put a little mark there, and I'm going to draw another small wrinkle line like that. Okay, and that looks very nice. Got the toes and my back foot all done. Okay, now while I'm working over here, I'm going to go ahead and finish off this body. So I'm going to just draw over this body shape because I think it's really good. I'll just draw over that with a nice smooth curve, as you can see. And I'll come up just like my simple shape does, and I'll touch his leg right there. Okay, nice curving body shape. Okay, now I have this little piece of foot here. I pretty much don't need to change it at all. So I'll just carefully draw over that. And this is the back foot that is hidden behind his body. And I'll draw that over until it touches right there. Okay, great. I'm going to leave this elbow alone, and I'm going to go ahead and work on this front foot. Okay, so for this foot, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here at the bottom, and I'm going to draw toe number 1. So I'm going to draw over this, not quite to the end, maybe about right there, and then I'm going to curve up into my simplified shape like this, and I'll curve up about that far. Okay, and that gives me toe number 1. Okay, now I'm going to do the same thing that I did with those other toes. I'm going to use toe number 1 to help me draw toe number 2. So toe number 2 is going to touch about right here, right near the bottom of my simplified shape. It's going to curve up with a curving line at about the same angle as toe number 1. So that'll curve up like this, as you can see. And then toe number 3 is going to be really thin. I'll start it about right here, and I'll curve up, and there's just going to be a really thin space between toe number 2 and toe number 3. And I'm just going to draw over my simplified shape like this. And then I'm going to draw into his arm about that far. Okay, so toe number 2 looks, toe number 1 looks pretty big. Toe number 2, a little smaller, and toe number 3, really small. Okay, I'll take my eraser, clean up my simplified shape just a bit, and I'll erase over here as well, just like that, as you can see. Nice. Okay, next thing I want to do. Now, I'm going to go ahead and finish off the top of his arm. Now, I hardly need to do anything to this simplified shape, so I'm just going to draw over it, make sure I hit the bottom of that ear, bottom of my collar. I'm going to draw up, and I don't need to change that hardly at all. Okay, and that gives me the top of his arm. Okay, now let's work on the bottom of his arm. Now this simple shape is pretty good, and I'm going to come up here, I'm going to follow it just like this, and then I'm going to put it just a little bit inside, just a little bit inside his body right here. Okay, now then I've got this elbow bump or this elbow joint. I kind of have it right here. Now let me adjust that just a little bit, and I'm going to draw kind of like a half circle like that, representing that bump on his elbow. So see how I did that. Okay, then once I've got this nice bump here, I'm going to change direction, pretty much follow this simplified shape line. I'll come up with a nice curve, and I'll draw that like that, as you can see. But it's really important to kind of get that nice bump for his elbow, as you can see there. Okay, let's touch that up. So my line got a little bit thick right there. I'll touch that up. And I'll erase part of his body now, covered up by his arm, as you can see there. Okay, now before I can leave this arm alone, I have to do one more little wrinkle. So on this arm line, I'm going to come down this line about right there, and I'm going to put just a little curve for another little wrinkle, as you can see right there. Okay, excellent. All right, let's move on to the top of his body. Okay, so my simplified shape touches my collar about right there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is follow this up with a nice curve, and I'm going to continue curving upwards until I get about right here where the arm touches the body, and then I'll stop for a second. Now let me go over that just a little bit darker so you can see it, and see how it touches right there, like that. Okay, now where it touches, I'm going to continue, but now I'm going to go down into the body about that far. Okay, so did you see how that line curved, following my simplified shape, but then it curved into the body? Okay, great. Let's continue. Now, right here, where my arm touches my body, on this simple shape line, I'm going to draw another curve that's going to curve into his body like that. Okay, so there you go. There's a nice little curve number 2. All right, now let's do one more detail on his body. So I'm going to come to his collar, and not quite touching it, but very, very close to it, I'll draw a little dot right there. Okay. And then I'm going to draw another little dot for me to go to about right here. Okay, and I'll put that in. Now, what I want to do is I want to draw a curve that is about the same angle as this body line here. So I'm going to go ahead and draw from this point to this point, but not with a straight line, but with a curving one. I'm going to do that really light at first, like that. You can barely see it. Then I decide if I like it. And if I do, I'm going to draw over that, make it a little more dark and a little more definite. So that's another body wrinkle. Okay, very good. Let's work on this arm here, this triangular shape that's above his back. Okay, so I'm going to draw over my simplified shape. I'm going to use a bit of a curving line, not quite a straight one. And then once again, he's got this bump for his elbow. So I'm going to bump up like this, bring that around, connect into the arm, and I'll come down like this, and I'll touch that back right there. Okay, and once again, I need that nice bump for his elbow. Okay, one more thing I need to do. So I need to draw a little wrinkle for his arm, and I'm going to draw that about right here. I'm not going to draw a straight line, but a line that curves just a little bit only about that far. And there you go. Okay, now let's finish off his back. So from this wrinkle, I'm going to draw a bit of a curving line, and now I'm basically going to follow my simple shape body line like this, and I'll draw this up, getting a nice curve, following my simple shape, and I'll finish off the top of that body just like that. Okay, great. Now, this leg here, that simple shape looks really good to me. So what I'm going to do is I'll just draw over that also. Nice curve like this. Then it's going to come up. If your simple shape was good, it makes the drawing process a lot easier. And I'll just come up and connect right there into the side and top of his body. Okay, and I'm going to grab my eraser. I'm going to do a little bit of erasing here. I'm going to erase right here. Got a simple shape. Get rid of that. I can see a little bit of my line of action and simple shape in here. I'll try to erase those. And then, do you remember this little cross, this reference point? We can erase that also, because that was a temporary mark right there. Okay, now there's one more detail that we cannot forget, and that is his tail. So we don't have a simplified shape for his tail, so we need to figure that out. So what I'm going to use is my knowledge of negative space, and I'm going to judge the distance from this elbow to the tip of his tail. So from this elbow, I'm going to draw up a short slanting line only about that far. I'll put my dot right there on that line. Then, so you're not confused, I'll erase the line, so I'm just left over with my dot. Okay. So I've judged the negative space between his elbow and the tip of his tail, represented by this dot. Okay. Before I draw it, I need to look at one more thing. Now, at its closest point, my tail is going to be about this close to his leg. So I'm going to mark that. And this is an example of me looking at negative space before I draw a positive shape. So what that means is I need his tail to hit this line so it's this close to his leg when I finish. Okay, let's go ahead and draw the first part of his tail. Okay, so I'm going to come here to the top of his body, and I'll put a mark right there where I'm going to start. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to hit here, and I'm going to end up right there. Okay, now I'm going to draw nice and light and sketchy. I have no simplified shape to help me, so I need to draw really carefully as I come like this. Then I'm going to start to curve my tail downward just a bit. I'm going to hit my mark, and then I'm drawing right towards my dot with a nice curve. See how light I did that? Okay, now if I like that, I'm going to draw over that just a little bit more like this. Okay, and that gives me a really nice shape for the first part of this tail. Nice, smooth, curving line. I like how close it is to my elbow, and I like how close it is to my leg at its closest point. Okay, now his tail is a little bit thicker at the top, so I'm going to mark that like this. That's how thick I want that tail to be at the top. And what I want to have happen is I want my tail to be thick, and then as it travels towards the end of it to the tip, I want it to be really skinny. Okay, so here I go. Now I'm going to start at this tail tip here. I'm going to keep it really skinny. And then I start to come up this tail, I'm going to start to break away from my line a little bit, not too much. And as I continue towards the back of my tail, I'm going to get a little bit thicker. Okay, so I'm going to draw that like this. I'm really thick, and then I'm going to get skinnier, and I'm going to connect just like that. So what should happen is our tail should be thick here at the top, and then really thin here at the point. Okay, and then what I want to do is I want to take my pencil and just fill in this tail with some light gray shading. I can make that a little bit darker later, like that. Once again, thick at the back, really skinny at the tip, just like that, giving me the tail of Pluto. Okay, so I look over my drawing, I'm double checking that I haven't forgotten any of my details, and it looks like I haven't, and I have completed a successful drawing of one of the most famous Disney dogs ever, Pluto.